Good morning, YouTube. It is 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and today we're going to do something just a little bit different. So we've been doing a lot of bowls on the channel. We've been doing mostly just wood turning, but I thought, you know what, let's build something. And today we are building a bathroom tub tray. So last December in 2023, me and my wife went to Wimberley, Texas for her birthday. And there was a vendor there. There's like a big farmer's market kind of thing that was selling slabs of wood. And our cat broke our previous bathtub tray. And she was like, you know what, you could probably make something, that could work as a bathtub tray. And I was like, sure, why not? Because I've never done this before. So she ended up picking out a slab of wood she thought looked really good. And she was like, okay, go forth and make a bathtub tray. So this is a piece of black walnut that she picked up that was just the right size. She liked the grain, she liked the wood, and she was like, all right, go ahead and make it. So for the past 6 months or so, 7 months or so, the wood's been drying out in my workshop because Austin has humidity. Lubbock, Texas does not. So spent about 6 months drying out the wood. Very small, very thin piece of wood that we had to get all this stuff, all the moisture out of it. So I have watched enough Blacktail Studio to know, cut the bark off. So it's got a live edge on it, dried it out, and now we're just taking the chisels and getting everything just knocked off because she was like, okay, I like this wood, is what she told me, but I don't want to have a live edge on it. And you can do some of these with a live edge. And obviously I've never taken a live edge off before. So then I went and got my 4.5-inch wheel grinder and decided, you know what, I've seen this on TV, I can totally do this. So I took a sanding disc and put that on there, and it worked surprisingly well, other than it getting absolute dust everywhere in my workshop was the only thing I didn't like about it. But it was early in the morning. I didn't want to wake my neighbors with the sound of sanding, so waited a little bit longer. Then I finally went outside and started sanding off that live edge, and it came off really, really easy, which was good. And I was like, you know what, this might be easier than I anticipated. But even though this is just a slab of wood, essentially there's a lot of prep that goes into this. So if you have an idea that you kind of want to try this, yes, it looks easy, it looks simple, it looks basic, but there's a lot of prep work that goes into making this. So we're just taking off that live edge. I took off as much as I could with the chisels, and here I am. I know, really bad camera work, but essentially you guys see what I'm doing here, which is just making sure the live edge is taken off, all that bark that's already dead, and then just coming back and ensuring that that portion of it is off. So this is what the workshop looked like with, when you don't have any ventilation and there's nothing catching all that. So I had to come back, waste about an hour or so trying to clean all this up, because if there's one thing I do appreciate about my workshop, I do like it to be tidy and clean. So did all of that, and now the live edge is pretty much off. So now we get to my favorite part, which is sanding. I think we went from 80 to 120 to 220 to 320 on both sides. So once we got a majority of the material worked off that we didn't want, the sanding part was probably the longest and most tedious portion of this. And then this is probably my other favorite part. I love using this rasp. So the edge of it was kind of wonky, and I was going to take my skill saw and just make everything even, but I thought this made like a cool little accent piece to it. Just, a wonky edge on the end. And all I did was take my rasp, get those edges worked down, and then take my sander and then sand them out. So a lot of ways I could have gone about doing this. I could have done like polyacrylic to seal it, but I was like, you know what, let's do epoxy, because that's what I do on this channel, and everybody knows that you got to try something once to see how it goes. So this wood cost me $25. My wife really, in spite of what she said, didn't have a lot of high expectations for this project, and she had been waiting 6 or 7 months since she told me to build it. So I was like, okay, cool, let's seal it with epoxy and then just see what it looks like. So that's what we're doing here, and she got not only epoxy, she got the best epoxy on the market. Total Boat, not sponsored, but hey, Total Boat, if you're listening, sponsor me. But we just came back, did the first coat of the Total Boat epoxy here, and you can see the grain of that wood just looks awesome. So 24 hours later, came back, kept on popping it with the bubbles, but of course when you seal wood, you're gonna have some issues. Came back and there were small little micro bubbles, and that's what we're doing here with the sanding. There's a block of wood underneath this holding this above the actual trash bag. So if you're wondering what the wobble is, that's what that is. So then we did that, came back, added a second layer to this, and we're just going to spread that out nice and even, making sure that we get it everywhere. But the wood grain looks awesome. So if you're going to do this, you're just going to spend mostly a lot of time just popping these bubbles, but you just want to make sure that the epoxy evens out on the actual board itself. But this part went relatively smooth, not a whole lot of problems here. And this wood looks gorgeous, by the way. I love how black walnut looks. And here we go, just making sure we're getting the edges, popping those bubbles as we go along with the heat gun. Not a whole lot of problems there. And then we go ahead and flip it, and then we have to work off all those pieces of epoxy that kind of got, they had that little drip factor there. So that's what we're doing here, is just popping those all off. And then we're going to sand, and then we're going to put our last layer of epoxy on the bottom of it. And don't know what happened there, but that's essentially what we're doing. And just popping off those pieces so we don't have to waste time sanding them. So went back, sanded all these again, making everything just nice and even. Because if you don't sand it, it's not going to seal right. So this is an important step. So if you think you're just going to not have to sand your board, you're going to have to sand your board. So you're going to spend a lot of time sanding. So just get ready to do that if you decide to make one of these. And you could pretty much use any size piece of wood. We just measured this for our bathtub. So it doesn't have to be this big or this small. Just do whatever you would like. But just ended up sanding all those off, and those came off relatively easy. So now we're going to add the last base coat. And this time I decided to experiment a little bit and just brush on the epoxy. Last time I just let it pour on and even out. But I just wanted to see what this was like, because later in the year I'm going to build my first table, epoxy table. So I just wanted to see what went a little bit smoother. And this technique I thought was actually better for the sealing part, and then coming back and then just letting it self-level. But use a brush if you want to. I think this was a little bit more effective in controlling the epoxy pour, in my opinion. But it's set up real good, especially with those live edges or those edges of the board there. I think that helped a lot. So 24 hours later, I let that dry up, and it looks gorgeous. I love how this wood looks, absolutely stunning. So we are all done, and now we're going to see what it looks like on the bathtub itself. Just make sure you get a micro mesh and microfiber towel and clean it up. But this is what it looks like. Looks really good. There's still a couple of dimples, a couple of spots where I didn't like it, but I was at the point where it's like, hey, cut your losses. It looks good. Make it better in the next one. So Generation 2 will look a lot better, but this one already looks fabulous in my opinion. So my wife has this for her baths, and I think it looks really good. Just something simple, something basic, but a lot of work goes into making them. But overall, really happy how this project turned out. It's level, it sits on there, and she can have her wine, read her books, put her soap, and not have to worry about anything. But hope you liked it, hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.